Hi there, this is Tracy, and I am here honored to be talking with Shannon Thomas of South Lake Counseling in Texas. And Shannon is the author of Healing from Hidden Abuse, a journey through the stages of recovery. So Shannon, tell us about yourself and how you came to writing this book.
Oh boy, it's a journey. I think anytime you write a book, you sort of have some ideas and it morphs. I have an organic style, and so it's organic to whether the way I do therapy or write. And so for me, it's a lot of piecing things together. And I started doing the post quite a while ago, and all of a sudden it was like, okay, I think I have enough ideas, enough concepts. And I wanted to kind of recreate what folks were maybe experiencing when they came in for a session, and kind of in first sessions walking through this recovery. And so there's a lot of good resources out there, but I felt like there was a piece missing from hearing from a lot of people that they had hoped that they could find a therapist who, understood and really got it. And so I kind of wanted to put a resource out there that would, like I said, recreate as much as possible the process clients go through from an active therapist, because I'm actively still seeing clients, and I felt like that was needed kind of in the community still. So
I agree, and I will tell everyone how I found you was through Pinterest, and your memes of stages of recovery just meant so much to me that I believe I made a video many, many months ago reading your memes, because we often, especially when we begin this journey, we start off with identifying and reading the red flags, reading who they were, their behaviors, starting to understand and see our own lives through a different lens, really. But we get to a point where this knowledge is built up, and then now what? The recovery process was such an important part for me. So today we're going to talk about the stages of recovery, and you've got six stages.
Yes.
And before we start, I'm going to read the first line of your stage 1, which to me, when I talk to the people in my community, everyone feels this way. I know I felt it. And so this first line just totally hits me. It's stage 1, which is despair. We'll let you describe it. But when survivors first begin counseling for psychological abuse recovery, many don't even know that they've been abused. So tell us about stage 1.
Yeah, a lot of times folks will come in and say, a lot of self-blame, a lot of I'm not doing this right, I'm clearly, too petty, too jealous, too unorganized, or whatever lies have been really kind of washed over them by the abuser or abusers if there's more than one. And so despair can look really hard, and it can look different for different people. Some folks come in and despair is that they've been discarded, or despair looks like they know they need to do something because they're not healthy. They're physically starting to wear out because of the environment of being around people that are toxic.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first stage shows very differently in different people, but the common theme is that it's just very chaotic. And like I mentioned in the book, it's the idea of kind of feeling like you're a snow globe and everything's been shaken up, or you're swimming, looking for air, looking for relief, and you end up going worse. And sometimes that can look like trying to please the abusers or abuser and trying to morph to whatever, they had kind of sown as the ideal, but there is no ideal, because being harmonious is not the goal for abusers. So despair can look, like I said, just worn out. Something's not right in my life. Something's happening, or I've just discarded. I don't even know what I just went through. So it's a lot of I don't know what's happening, but I'm being caught up in this sort of vortex.
Mm-hmm.
And it's messy, and a lot of times what we're talking about is breathing. I know that sounds pretty basic, but breathing, stopping for today. And there's no shame where we are where we are. And so it's just really like, okay, how do we calm down and not just relax and let go? That's not the concept at all. But for 45, 50 minutes of a session, it's safe for right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the rest of the day might look different, and it might look different before you walked in, but for right now, we're okay. We're going to breathe, and we're going to figure out, okay, what's the very next little step?
Right.
Yeah.
And I so appreciate that information, because I had to learn, that panic attack, that fear, that complete confusion. I would walk into a room and forget what I was doing. And it was like I was on drugs or something. I was just like, my brain stopped functioning. And for me, a lot of physical things were happening in that despair state where, my body wasn't sleeping. I didn't want to eat. And I didn't even know that I wasn't eating until my son came home for a Christmas vacation. He's like, Mom, like, you eat once a day. And I'm like, yeah. and it just never occurred to me because I was so trying to just get up every day. And I think a lot of people, really struggle with that at first.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of research that shows at a physiological level, the brain with, post-traumatic stress disorder, that changes, that the way the brain kind of lights up and how we're functioning and our cognitive ability can definitely be impacted by being in a chronically toxic environment.
Mm-hmm.
It's through all of the things that we can talk about, in the other stages, but it's very real. People feel foggy-headed. People feel anxious. There are multiple physical and emotional things that can happen. And sometimes that's the driver for coming into therapy. It could be that their family, of origin was toxic and that never really got dealt with, but they're still sort of hanging, that baggage is hanging on them. Not that they want it there at all. They want it to be gone. But how do we sort of unpack it? And so there's always some driver that gets them to come into therapy. And that may be, I just want to feel happier, all the way to, and everything in between, but all the way to, I'm breaking down and I think I need to take a break from life and maybe be hospitalized or for physical or emotional and so everything in between that. But survivors, they come in all kinds of stages of what despair looks like, but it's always hard.
Yeah. And what you made was a really good point about finding therapy and getting in there. And I know that a lot of people complain that when they seek out a therapist to begin this process, they aren't sure that they've been abused. They don't really understand it. So they'll just go to somebody and maybe not know to ask them about trauma, PTSD. How does someone find someone as amazing as you?
No, you're sweet. I may be a good fit for some people, and I say very in the beginning, I'm not a good fit for everybody. Personality, style, approach, what I think recovery looks like, but there are some good people that we refer all the time to. And if folks are in an area that they don't have someone who specializes in it, and there's a few different directories out there that kind of list some folks that do specialize in this area, the very first suggestion is to find someone who's trauma-informed. And that can be, making a phone call. Of course, I'm biased to the degree I have, which is a licensed clinical social worker, because I think we're trained to look holistically, but there's also some very good marriage and family therapists and other licensing, counseling licenses like licensed professional counselors. But when folks reach out to us and they don't have anybody in their area or don't want to do, remote counseling or remote sessions with like a life coach, trauma-informed therapy will help them at least, hopefully, not be re-traumatized by someone through a therapist who either truly doesn't get it or maybe is also toxic themselves, because we can't ever, say, oh, no therapist is ever toxic, because there's toxicity in every community, in every profession.
Mm-hmm.
But finding someone who understands the brain changes with trauma and understands triggers and understands recovery, that gives folks somewhere to go, that they hope they will be safe from someone who's going to re-traumatize them. Then the specifics and the nuances of the narcissist, sociopathic, psychopathic abuse, psychological abuse, a trauma-informed therapist who doesn't know that specifically, hopefully will read some books and do some research. And the reason therapists don't know is because our programs don't cover this very much. Like we talked about, before we got started. We have so much to cover in, a 2-year program and then postgraduate work, that this particular area, it gets skimmed over. And it's so epidemic and pandemic right now, it needs to not be skimmed over in our graduate programs anymore.
Right. I agree. And that was really helpful. I think people are going to really understand now, thank you, for how to find the right help, especially in the beginning. You're not going to get to the next stages if you're blocked and you get into a therapist and they tell you, oh, you're doing everything fine. Don't worry. You're good. They listen to you just go, what? And they're
or blame the survivor. If you get into certain, especially in a religious setting, you can get a whole lot of, I come in with one problem and come out now with several.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. So tell us what stage 2 is.
Stage 2 is education. And I always have to go back and remember.
I can tell you if you want to.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I wrote the book and I'm like, my brain got fried in the process. But no, stage 2 is education. And the reason I put that there is because when survivors come in and they're in despair, we start talking very quickly about what is gaslighting, what is intermittent reinforcement, what is it that the abusers have done in the past or are currently doing. And when we can put names to it, that really helps them go, okay, it's not me. I must hear it's not me. I really am not being sensitive. I'm really not doing all the things the abuser said. But education comes right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know that you have an amazing amount of resources at the back of your book that indicate, what books to read, where are some good blogs, where are some good resources. And I have read all of the ones that you have suggested, particularly Psychopath Free.
Yes.
I love Jackson's work and Donna from Love Fraud. To me, these were my first steps on identifying, because a lot of people say that we don't want to I'm going to call us a victim. And I think as a victim, we have to go through victim to become a survivor. Because if we don't know that we had anything happen to us, to me, I can't avoid that step, but I don't want to stay there.
Agreed. Really, really powerful. Yes, agreed. You have to recognize it.
You have to. Otherwise, you're just going, okay, I had a bad boyfriend, or, my husband was a jerk, or my mother. If you don't see the patterns, you're never going to change them. So I think the education process is such a big part, and learning about the signs, the flags, the behaviors, and then your accountability, right? How was I a target? What was I giving out? Or again, not a victim blaming thing,
right.
But I had to learn about codependency. Whether I own that or claim it, I had to go, all right, am I this? Is this what I am? Read about it, learn about it, understand it, and then move to the next stage for me of identifying that my mother was a narcissist, and that explained my whole childhood. And therefore, now your patterns were that you understood and kind of knew crazy. So being in a relationship with that was kind of normal. So I think there's different steps. There's the education of learning about them, and then about us, right?
Sure, absolutely. And I think that there's, for me, there's a huge difference between being trauma bonded and being codependent. And I think some folks can be trauma bonded and then it moves into, what I would consider a clinical codependency. But there is a definite self-reflection phase, which I think that the survivor is already doing way before the despair. They've done so much self-reflection and so much the ability to say, let me look at what's being accused of me. Because there's a certain kind of general personality type that narcissists and sociopaths will attach to, and that can be somebody who's easygoing, someone who obviously has strengths that the toxic person wants to glean from initially and then siphon from after and destroy ultimately because of their jealousy. But really having to figure out, okay, at what point did I need to see red flags? What point did I need? But that's, for me, that's way down the road for survivors. I think that comes much more after the foundation and the ground is found again.
Okay.
Because they've done so much work of looking at themselves that we kind of have to pull away a little bit in the sessions from looking at the inward to looking at what's happening from the other person and what's the abuser or the abusers doing. And then we can look and kind of sort through, okay, is it trauma bonding or is it really kind of going into codependency? And those are two different kind of recoveries.
Right, exactly. Yeah. All right, stage 3. I'm going to give you the hint. It's awakening.
No, I got it. I was teasing. I remember. was awakening. Yes, that's that. Okay, so I'm been in despair, and now I understand that there are terms that go with what has happened to me, and it's that wow. It's that awakening of I'm not crazy. I'm not all these terrible things that the person has said. I may not feel that way every day. Some days I flop between feeling really broken and not well, and then other days it's like, okay, I can see the picture clearly, and then it fades out, and now I'm not clear again. And oftentimes with clients, we're on that journey. Some days they get it, they got it, the abuser's the abuser, and other days they're back to, why couldn't I make this work? What's wrong with me? It's normal part of the rewiring of the brainwashing and all the things that have happened to them. So the awakening is that, wow, there really are other people out there, and maybe it's not just me, and maybe I really can find some healing. It's a good momentary stage, but we got to get further than that.
Oh yeah. I think that the awakening part is, fully aware, but looking through life as a different lens. I don't think a day goes by that as I think about something, this new lens goes, oh, that's what that is. Yeah. I had a thing this week with one of my sisters, and she did what she's done to me for the last 55 years, which is when she gets upset, she pulls away. But she does it in such a dramatic way that she's screaming and crying on the phone, and then it leaves me like freaked out, and I can't reach her, and I think she's dead. And I'm now looking at it going, well, this is a new lens. Oh my God, this is a pattern she's done to me over and over. And how do we turn that off? Let myself not go into panic because of her stuff.
Right.
It's looking at it in a different lens, because for 55 years, I knew that she did that, and I would come to the rescue. So now I'm looking at it and going, all right, now I see it differently. And I think that helps us heal to start to see these things.
Most definitely. It's that reframing. It's that narrative theory of changing the story over time. It's cognitive behavioral therapy. It's all of the trauma-informed care. It's the theories that are really grounded in how do we slowly rewire the impulses, the trauma responses. When she pulls away, and it's the idea of, oh no, she's harmed herself, or I don't even know, I'm just saying, or she's hurt somehow, or something bad has happened. That is that part of the brain, that fight or flight. And so it's stopping and saying, okay, this may be a tactic, this may be, manipulation, this may be, and really having to wrestle through. And that's what a lot of folks do with trauma.
Yeah.
They're psychologically abusive triggers,
Yeah.
Somebody knows how to pull that string to get that fear response.
Exactly. And I know that you wrote on page 117, if I may say, that after psychological abuse, that it's hard to trust. Yes. And it's hard to trust another person. But can we talk about that for a second?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think that, it's learning to trust yourself too. I think that's through the education stage and through the awakening, and then some of the others that come that I wrote later on. It's learning to trust, okay, will I identify abusers down the road again? And I have this idea, and I couldn't put it in the book because it's kind of visual, and I've had to figure out, like, how do I tell this story? But I have this idea, we talk about a lot in therapy, that there's this fence, and on this side of the fence, I'll put my hands up more, and on this side of the fence are those clinical narcissist, sociopath, psychopath. They're not changing because nothing's wrong with them. This is that clinical side. If we grew up in a toxic home that was maybe over here, we meet somebody, they might be healthier, but they're still on that side of the fence. You get on this side, this is normal. You might have someone right here who's super selfish, but they can systematically get better. They can, have an awakening, they can have changes. They either deal with alcohol or drugs or other things that recovery, and they get healthier. This side of the fence never changes. They just get worse, actually, with age. So with learning to trust ourselves is we have to recognize that this side, I may have been conditioned through family or through other things to accept certain behaviors. I don't want to live on this side. I want to know, what does this side look like? What do people on this side, how do they behave? How do they talk? How do they deal with conflict? How do they work through things? This is where I want to be, is over here. And that learning to trust, again, is recognizing what do people and how do people behave when they're on that narcissist, sociopath, psychopath side. How do I get where that's no longer not okay, but I can see it because, like I said, I may be conditioned that family's way over here. Well, spouse may have been here, but still not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that a lot. People will say, I thought I was picking better. I thought, and they were.
Mm-hmm.
And we celebrate that, yes, you did not pick somebody that was exactly like what you grew up with or who you were married to or whatever the case is, but it wasn't on that other side of the fence, and there's no shame about it.
Right.
You got to recognize what do those two different worlds look like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think trust comes from that, from really being able to see and recognize that I deserve to live on that side of the fence with healthy people who actually value me,
Mm-hmm.
survivor, or whoever the topic might be.
Yeah. And I think for me, marrying someone that has these personality traits, I think they tricked me by me revealing all of what I had been through in my life, and not saying I even knew what had happened in my family, but revealing that the most important thing to me was to find family. I wanted that real family. I want Thanksgiving dinner. I want this. I want that real. I want to be on that side of the fence.
Yeah.
So for me, my narcissist and his entire family kind of emulated what I wanted. They created and mirrored what I wanted on that side of the fence. So they tricked me. And now I know what to look for. And like, okay, the family unit that I said I wanted would not do the things that they did, you know?
Yeah.
It's I was hoping and holding onto that railing going, I found a family that is together every Easter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they were so dysfunctional, they were screaming at each other. That's not normal, but
right.
Now I can see. Now I'm educated. Now I'm awakened to the fact that I love that fence thing. We're going to go with that fence thing.
I need to figure out how to put it on a post. I really haven't done that. I haven't been able to figure it out yet.
But you've now done it on a video.
There we go. Exactly.
Oh, awesome. All right, let's talk about stage 4, boundaries.
Yes, here's where the rubber meets the road. But what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, and this is such an important part to learn because a lot of survivors didn't know them. I didn't know how to set a boundary. I didn't know how to say no. I was the people pleaser. You wanted me to, do something for you on a Saturday? Sure. I'll give up my Saturday because I'm helpful. I'm nice. Right. I didn't know how to say, I really am tired. I can't do that this weekend. Right. I didn't know how to do that. And it's very empowering when you learn.
It is. And it's scary. I mean, it's scary too, because I feel like for a lot of times, especially when someone has, it's probably not a word, but traumatically conditioned us, I guess it has turned into a verb, but conditioned us to believe that if we don't do what they want, bad things will happen. Mm-hmm. And we've maybe pushed the boundary a little bit, like I'm not going to do this, and they showed us clearly that bad things happen and that we get punished or that life becomes more difficult. So we go, okay, uncle, I can't fight. I can't. So with boundaries, this is where therapeutically I see folks that come in that are in despair, and we do some education and there's an awakening of, aha, this is what I'm dealing with, or other people. Boundaries are then very hard sometimes because it's either the no contact or detached contact. And that's where we spend a lot of the therapeutic time sometimes in how do we implement either of those two options? And what does it look like? And that's where I know that resources are hard for some folks to find therapy or to find someone in their community. But that's really where the individualized care through either journaling or finding something. That's why I put a journal in the back of the book so that they can kind of personalize it maybe a little bit more if they can't find therapy or it's not in the budget. But that's where we have to figure out, okay, what are my boundaries? And what would be mine in this given setting, but what would it be to this other person? And how do we implement those two options of detached contact or no contact, given the situations? And so we spend a lot of time figuring out and dissecting, okay, what is the best option given the dynamic of what's happening?
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. On my website, which is Narcissist Abuse Support, we did a lot of research to build this site, and in our own area here in Colorado, there are agencies in every single state. And on my website, I listed 650 resources, state by state, that people can turn to. That mine was called Safe House for Progressive Alliance, and as a state person, this is a benefit to victims. And so often I would have never thought it was for a victim of emotional abuse, but I got 10 weeks of counseling from this organization, and it was the most validating. It was like, oh yes, this is exactly, and she taught me to ground myself, and she taught me to breathe when I was having a panic attack. Yeah. And people don't realize that if they can't afford, like you were saying, victims are very often like financially abused as well, and left with like, how am I going to buy food? So for everyone to understand that this resource is out there, no matter where they live, they can get a little bit of help. And that turned my life around. Yes. And so it would be great if everyone could access someone like yourself, but I don't want people to not think that there's resources that we can tap into.
Yes, and I'm glad that you put it in a place that's, easy for them to get to, easy to find, and sometimes it feels like in communities a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
I know in our community, I know very few resources for folks, and we have scoured.
Yeah, and meetups are a really good source as well. And, I have a meetup here in Colorado, and there are about 60 of them in the United States, which is pretty powerful. They are usually survivor-led. I know that there's probably an ethical thing with a counselor, helping the whole room and confidentiality and all kinds of other stuff. Mm-hmm. So the victims and survivors are leading these groups, but just being together with other survivors, hearing the story, that lens that you heard their story, and suddenly something in your life becomes, I've just viewed it in a different lens. So people can turn to that for help.
Well, it's the power of AA. It's the power of support groups. So it's time tested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's actually, I think, 3 in the United States that are certified by AA to be a 12-step program of narcissistic abuse treatment. So it's kind of cool that they've gone that far.
Yes, very.
Yeah, and you talk about the balanced life model in this stage.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do. And what that looks like is sort of, sometimes folks will come in and they have to see how has their life in the different areas of their life been impacted by somebody that's toxic or a toxic group. And so we can use it a different way, where we can look at, okay, how's my work impacted? Or how would my work be different if I set a boundary? Or if I went no contact, or I went detached contact? And how would my spiritual life, if there was a spirituality there, how would my hobbies? And we just kind of look at all the different areas of their lives and look and see, okay, what is the impact of going no contact, detached contact, or just staying as it is? That's always option 3, because clients come in and they have their own empowerment. They get to decide what works for them. Mm-hmm. But we can definitely talk about the risks of staying right where they're at. But ultimately, that's what the balanced life model really does help, is flush out all the different sections of what we think is needed for a healthy life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I know for me, I didn't realize that I had given up cooking. I love to cook. And I was like, well, when's the last time I cooked and did something fun like that?
Exactly.
And you start to realize how these things changed, and how being under the control that you put them in front of things that made you happy, right?
Oh, most definitely. And sometimes that's part of the awakening of, wow, this has really taken over so many areas.
Mm-hmm. And this leads into your 5th stage, which is restoration. And that is about taking back these things, right?
Excuse me, it is. It's about, hopefully I'm not going to get a coughing fit here.
Uh-oh.
We've got a lot of weather flying around with allergies and things. But yeah, restoration is really taking a look back. One more minute here. Got my water. You can talk amongst yourselves here for a second. Mm-hmm. But the restoration is looking back and saying, okay, during, whether it was childhood or during, a specific work environment, or during, being in a toxic church, or any of these areas, or in a relationship, what has been lost? What do I feel like I don't have now? Or, tangibly what's been lost. We talk about that, very specific mementos or certain things that were important, or like for you, cooking, hobbies. How do we get back to, or even recreate in a lot of ways, those things that we should be at? And I don't mean should in a, supposed to look a certain way, because life looks a lot of different ways, and I love that, But what would I hope to have achieved? And so there's a lot of different exciting opportunities to be able to step back and say, okay, I love cooking, and through this abusive relationship, that was lost. So maybe I'm going to go to a community ed class and take a cooking class, or maybe I'm going to go, to the library or to the bookstore and get a cookbook, and I'm going to commit that every Sunday I'm going to make really great dishes that are exciting to me, and, or something that is impactful. And I think it's that living free again, or living free for the first time if we were in toxic relationships from a young age or from childhood. So restoration to me is really exciting. It's that opportunity, but not to get overwhelmed, because I think sometimes we can be like, okay, I want it all back.
Right.
I want it all to be super healthy. And that's why I like to use that kind of measured, that measuring stick model, where it's just little tiny successes. If it's, I'm going to go and I'm going to work out for 10 minutes, and that's going to be successful. And then maybe the next day or a couple of days later, it'll be 10 minutes again. And then we just very rehabilitatively increment our way to where we want to be.
Yeah. I think, to me too, that to understand that it is a roller coaster. Yes. And, people just think, okay, I'm going to get better. And then something happens that triggers them. It could be a holiday rolling around. It could be a memory or something that you did at this time of the year with that person. And you trigger and you go down. And I think we judge ourselves like, wait, I was going like this, and then boom, he did it again. Or it's to understand that each time you go down, it's going to get less, and you're going to start to get up that movement. It's so powerful to not judge ourselves as we're going up, to know that things might just change a little bit, and that's okay, right?
It's very okay, and it's part of the process. And I think that if somebody feels like they're not feeling well and they need to take a day or so just to kind of regroup, rather than regrouping and feeling shamed and why am I needing this, it's enjoy it, embrace it. Really narratively, we can talk about the narrative theory, change the narrative, change the story, that rather than, oh, I'm this and I'm that and I'm all of these negative things, it's, I'm going to take some time and I'm going to rest and I'm going to listen to birds and I'm going to, binge watch some shows that I really like, and I'm going to make that be okay. And not only okay, but a gift to myself. I'm not going to do it forever, and it's not going to be weeks on end, but I'm going to let myself, for whatever time frame I can, and let it be good. And I think that it's really just kind of flipping the story, rather than all of the heaping of the condemnation that we do.
Right, exactly. You wrote a great quote in this chapter that says, at some point, survivors must choose to live again. Yeah. And that, to me, just hit my heart. Like, it is a choice. And again, that 10-minute walk, that just doing one more thing for you. For me, it's, I'm not going to answer emails on the weekend. And to me, that has revolutionized my entire life, because I was tied to doing that and always having to perform. And now I'm enjoying myself. And that's a really good place to be, because we need to choose that we want to live again.
Yeah, and I think that it's easier for some, depending on the intensity of the brainwashing that they went through too. But I think all survivors have to get to the point where it's good. It's good to have hobbies. It's good to go do exciting things that's exciting in their life. And I've had several, and many that have told me, that as far as emails and phone calls and things, but many people have said that at some point they had to move forward and deal with the idea that if I'm moving forward and I'm living vibrantly, this never happened. And I think that can be a hook to staying sort of like I said in the book, like a monument to the hurt. And I get that understanding of like, boy, if I go live well, am I saying that I was never harmed? And that's a subconscious tape that we definitely have to work through therapeutically. And for
Mm-hmm.
people to recognize, maybe I am kind of being hindered a little bit by that belief system.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
think the
And we
first,
have to turn that belief system around and just
yes,
say, no, it's okay to take care of you and love ourselves.
and it's more than just okay. It's also saying that the abuser didn't have the power to completely destroy.
Yeah, that's
And
really,
that kind of, you see people are like, yeah, that's right. That's like, okay, I am not completely destroyed, and I'm smarter for having gone through this. Not that we would ever be like, oh, thank you for abuse. Never going to do that,
yeah,
ever.
no,
But we can be grateful for the gifts out of it.
exactly. And that to me has been a big healing point.
Good.
All right, we are number 6, which is maintenance.
Yes.
So tell us about maintenance.
Yeah, I think, for maintenance, it's really about, like I say in the book, getting to that mountaintop of kind of climbing and falling off and getting back and getting to that place of, you know what, I've got these stages under my belt for one go around. I'm going to be doing them again, not to the same intensity of the despair or the same intensity of the education. Because once you've gone through it once, it's like, okay, I get this now, but it's not my fault. I just have to keep reminding myself.
Mm-hmm.
But maintenance is really about that learning to trust again. It's the healing. It's taking it deeper to swinging back around when the anniversaries come again. The triggers happen. It's an exciting stage, but it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It has to be engaged. I don't think that it can be passive. Maintenance has to be something that we figure out what works for us for recovery, whether that's getting new activities that we're involved in or other things, but it's very personal. But it's that, how do I keep living with the healing that I've received and that I've worked for?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you put a wonderful thing in, and I'm going to quote you again. The psychological abuse figuratively kicked down the door of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And then in their rage, they damaged the sacred space of your home. To me, that hit home for sure, that they took this away, and we have to take it back.
Take it back and repair it and fix it, and then we protect it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when people sometimes worry, will I let another person like this? And we never let these people in, especially if it's childhood, especially if there was a whole lot of idealization stage. That's one of the real misconceptions, is that somehow survivors attracted this into their lives. I just don't believe that. I believe that their strengths were exploited and were preyed upon. And there's a movie called The Maze Runner, and as I was watching it, it really reminded me of the psychological abuse, because as the participants start to get and figure out the maze, the whole maze changes. And so in these psychological abusive relationships, as things would start to happen and the pebbles of like, ooh, that's not right and that's not right, then all of a sudden the abusers or abuser will go, whoop, okay, we'll just shift this entirely around so they don't figure out completely. And so I think that the maintenance stage and getting to this place is about recognizing that I can keep myself safe,
Mm-hmm.
but recognizing that taking it slow. And there's a few blogs out there about how to keep a narcissist from dating you and some other things. And one of them is just about moving forward slowly with discovering other people and letting them discover us and getting to know us and letting that be a slow process.
Right. I know that a lot of people ask, well, how long does it take? We want a pill. We want an answer. And I'm like, that's not it, and they're like, oh, I've already been through this for 3 months. It's time to date again. And I'm like, are you sure? Really?
Mm-hmm.
Because I, in both of my marriage and of my relationship with 3X, I call him,
Mm-hmm.
I was going through my divorce with my son's father when my second husband love bombed me and came in. I wasn't healed from the divorce. I was swept off my feet in the true prince in shining armor kind of a thing. And when I was going through the most horrific divorce with him, 3X comes along, and he's got the same story. He had the terrible marriage, and we had all that in common, and seemingly, but I wouldn't have been swept off my feet had I actually been able to really ground myself from the divorce.
Right.
I see that if people rush into it, they could be a victim like me. When number 3X knew what I just gone through, and he saw what I put up with, and he saw what I tolerated, and started to test the boundaries as to what can he get from me. And I caution people whenever I talk to them is, wait, just take care of you first. It's okay to be alone. It's okay to be with your friends. It's, you don't need someone in your life until you're whole. To me, that.
Right. And I think that it's that scary piece for a lot of folks of, can I do this on my own? Can I be independent? And I think that that's some of the journey of being able for folks to trust themselves, that yes, they really can. And they probably, if they recognize that they've been living previously, if they're divorcing with crumbs anyways, they've probably been doing it on their own anyways, in a lot of ways, in addition to having a toxic environment. So, and again, no shame at all for that fear of being alone. It's just having to call it that. I think a lot of times I do a lot of subconscious work of like, what's the subconscious messages, and how do we just kind of run with those, and that subconscious message that I need to have a partner, or I need to be connected with my person. We have to just put that right on the table and say, okay, there it is. There's no judgment around it, but just how do we water that down? How do we not make that be so important?
Right. I agree. I think that.
And a lot of times it's a recognition that they've already been doing it. They've already been independent.
Right. Absolutely. And it's again, it's a trust. Our trust in ourselves has been, shattered. And so we are afraid to trust that it's okay, afraid to financially be on our own. There's so much that goes into it. Raising a child, that's not how you pictured it, right? It's not that you're going to give your child off to this other person every weekend. And, you have to, there's so many layers, I think, and every person is different, but taking care of ourselves is the most important part. And I know that a lot of people can't say, I want to be alone. That's inside of them, where they're like, I don't want to be alone. Well, neither do I. But right now I am, and I'm really learning. And if I were to get into a relationship right now, I would stop the learning, and that same cycle could happen. I want to get on this side, and I need that space to get over the wall. I
think we also, we avoid what's uncomfortable or what's very fearful. And sometimes we have to just take it in small dosages, and creating a community. We need other people. We need to not be isolated. And in abusive and toxic relationships, there's so much isolation that happens. Even if we're around and seeing people, there's a lot that we're not telling them, or we don't tell them about our families, or tell them about the abuse that's happening at work or other places. And so for people to not need to be repartnered quickly, again, even if it's not a remarriage, but just a significant other, it's having great friends. It's having a great, community of people and being involved. I mean, I'm an introvert, so for me, my peopliness is filled up fairly quickly during the day. So I need to go home and kind of regroup, and have it be quiet. But whether we're introverts or extroverts, or get energy from people, or want to regroup on our own, we need to not isolate. And I think if we're not isolating, then that helps with do I need to go and really partner very quickly after a divorce? Because I see some people doing it in amazing ways that it's like they're not always busy, but they've got people. And sometimes it's having to build that community. Well, people can even leave sometimes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When I was first going through all this, a friend of mine said, just get your calendar out and call somebody. Go to the movies once a week. Just make a plan. It has to be, if you sit back and wait and just, even if you are the type that's going to shut yourself in, if you just say, I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to go for a hike after church every Sunday. Just do one thing, and slowly you'll start to restore and get back to where you need to be.
Yes, or get there for the first time sometimes, Sometimes it's they don't have something to go back. They really have to, I'm sure you've seen it, that they had to build new.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The last thing, I want to take your time. I am so grateful for this. I am looking for your book. So I want to tell everyone about buying this book. It is the key to your healing. and I strongly, strongly recommend it. But Shannon, you have a part in here about people getting together for a book club and using your book as a tool. You have a website that does stuff like that. The sun is coming for the first time in a week. So I'm like, oh my God, wait. All right, you talk and I'll close.
Okay, that works. While I was coughing and drinking my water, you spoke. So yeah. It's healingfromhiddenabuse.com. And what people can do is if they're interested in being a host, there's the ways to walk through the process of hosting. And registering as a host, and then they get a password protected page sent to them over email, and we put all of the hosts that want to be a book leader on there. Not all of them have folks that are coming because there maybe isn't anybody in their area, but these are folks who have stepped up and said, I would love to host a book study. That would be, at a coffee shop or somewhere, that everyone feels comfortable. And it's going through the book. I'm sure it's going through other materials. There are wonderful resources out there from other advocates and therapists. And it's basically a place for them, like a meetup, to come and do a book study and to talk about it and talk about their personal journey. If somebody wants to be in a book club and not be a host, and then they can go to the same website, healingfromhiddenabuse.com, and register as a book member. And then they get the access to the password protected page that shows the different hosts that we have listed on there.
What a great idea. I think that I'm going to pimp it out to all of the people in my community and try to really pass that word around, because this is a book about healing, and together we heal.
Yes.
Look at the sun. Oh my God.
It likes you.
Raining for a week, and now we're talking and the sun is coming out. It's magnificent.
And real quick, every group might be different. And people have asked me, are you going to license it? Are you going to? No, the book is the book. And I kind of use this picture in my mind that the book is just soil, and that different trees are going to pop up in different areas. And that's going to look what each community needs. And it may look specific to each leader. Like, we have some great therapists down in Waco, Texas that have been doing some groups, and they are beautiful, amazing women that are very artistic. And so their groups look very organic and artistic and holistic, and I love it. And other groups may look very different given their community and given their culture and what that drives there. And so for me, I love that idea that people can take it and make it be what works for their community. So people ask me, as hosts, is there like a registration or some sort of workbook for them as leaders? And it's kind of like, no, just go be what it is that works for you. There may down the road be a facilitator's guide for therapists. One of the ladies, the therapist Jennifer in Waco, we talked about that. So that's something different. But as far as just book host people, it's really about getting together and talking. It's not really having to be a therapist or be a life coach. That's why we didn't do injustice therapy groups, but we did them as just book studies.
Awesome.
Meet somewhere safe, meet somewhere comfortable, and meet. I think that was the biggest thing too, is because we have a lot of great online resources, but very little opportunities to find each other face to face.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that for me, we do my meetups at a library. You can get free space, and so we just lock ourselves in a room, and it's a wonderful thing. Coffee shops are great, but sometimes, there's a lot of ambient noise and other people. Right. So every group's going to find what works for them. Might be in someone's living room every week or however you schedule it. But I think healing together is so important, and I'm so, so grateful for your book.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
I really appreciate the support and the encouragement. It really does mean a lot. And Meetup, I just want to say, that's a great resource. That is online. That is nothing to do with Healing from Hidden Abuse, the book site. That is meetups for, meet with your dog and
exactly.
meetup for all kinds of things.
Meetup for a person with a dog with one blue eye.
There you go. You got a group for it.
That was the weirdest one I ever saw. I was like, really? They're meeting up and they've got to bring their one-eyed dog? Is there like a membership card for them?
I love it. Well, Meetup was definitely the model when we were talking about, okay, how would we do this book study webpage? And that was definitely the concept.
Yeah, I think it's about getting together and finding people that get what you've been through and can help you see things in a different way, because it's listening. And YouTube's perfect for that too, because you sit there and you listen to any of the people that are out there talking about something, and you relate to it. You start, a light bulb goes off, and that's a really big part of my healing as well. I started with YouTube.
Agreed. It's the isolation that keeps us from not knowing what exactly we're going through, and it's a tool of abusers. So when we start reaching out, it's very powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you, Shannon. I appreciate it. And I really, I will let you know as soon as we get this video up.
Okay, awesome.
I really can't thank you enough, because you're my hero.
Oh, you're very sweet. I'm just another person on a journey. Some days are good days, some days are rough days, some days are great days. Other days, it's, we're all just figuring it out along the way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Thank you for everything you're doing for survivors. The website looks great.
Thank you.
Really good.
Thank you. All right. Well, I will leave you with that, and have a great day. And thank you, everybody. That's all we got. Bye-bye.
Bye.